It clicked the day I stopped pretending confidence was something you build. Because that's the lie most people live with. They think confidence comes from winning, from being validated, from things going right. And every time life pulls one of those props away, they fold. I used to be like that. On the outside, I looked calm. Inside, everything was tied together with cheap rope. One bad meeting, one ignored message, one failure, and the whole thing tightened around my neck. What bothered me wasn't the failure itself. It was how fast my sense of worth collapsed with it. I'd mess up, and suddenly everything about me felt smaller, quieter, disposable, and the worst part, I didn't even notice it happening. It was automatic, like a reflex. Something goes wrong, confidence drops, you start chasing control, talking more, explaining yourself, trying to fix how others see you. That's when I realized something uncomfortable. Most men don't lose confidence because they fail. They lose it because they tied their value to things they don't control. And life loves pulling those strings. I didn't change overnight. There was no breakthrough moment with dramatic music. It was quieter than that, almost boring. I stopped trying to feel confident. Instead, I watched how my confidence actually worked. Every time something failed, I'd feel that drop in my chest, like standing on a platform that suddenly isn't there. And I'd ask one question: what exactly did I lose just now? Not emotionally. Practically, did I lose my ability to think? Did I lose my capacity to act tomorrow? Did my character rot in the last 5 minutes? Kung tuhuma sitai. No, gum. What I lost was an outcome, a role, an expectation. That's it. The problem is, most people never separate outcomes from identity. They weld them together, so when the outcome fails, the self goes down with it. That's not strength. That's bad wiring. Here's where things flipped. I stopped using failure as a verdict. I started treating it like feedback, cold, neutral, unemotional, like checking a map and realizing you took the wrong street. You don't panic. You don't apologize to the road. You just adjust. But that only works if your value isn't riding shotgun. Once I anchored my worth somewhere else, failure lost its teeth. And no, this isn't positive thinking. It's subtraction. I removed my ego from places it never belonged. Results, other people's moods, short-term wins. None of those deserve access to your identity. Here's a simple test. If someone can take it from you with silence, it was never solid. I started practicing restraint, not emotional suppression, restraint. When something went wrong, I did less. I didn't explain, didn't rush to reframe it, didn't try to stay confident. I let the dead air hang there, and something strange happened. The panic didn't grow. It burned out, like a fire with no oxygen. That's when I understood what real confidence looks like. It's not loud. It doesn't argue. It doesn't perform. It waits. There was a moment at work where this really landed. A project failed, publicly, not catastrophic, but enough to bruise reputations. The old version of me would have jumped in fast, over-explained, tried to control the narrative. This time, I didn't. I listened. I took notes. I spoke once. Short, clean, no defense. Then I stopped. The room felt weird. People expect scrambling. They expect noise. Silence unsettles them. Afterward, one of the guys pulled me aside and said, "You didn't seem bothered at all." I was bothered. I just wasn't owned by it. That's the difference. Confidence isn't the absence of reaction. It's the refusal to let reaction define you. Once you get this, something shifts. You stop needing things to go right, to feel steady. You stop chasing approval to feel valid. You stop explaining yourself to feel safe. Because your value isn't being negotiated in real time anymore. It's already settled. And when it's settled, you move differently. You take risks without flinching. You hear criticism without shrinking. You lose without collapsing. Not because you're numb, because you're anchored. Most men never build confidence. They rent it. From praise, from results, from attention. That's why it disappears overnight. What I learned is simpler. The confidence that survives failure is built on one decision. My worth doesn't move with events. Once that decision is made, behavior follows. You act cleaner. You speak less. You tolerate discomfort without drama. People feel that, not because you announce it, because nothing is leaking. No defensiveness, no overcorrection, no hunger for validation, just presence. The irony, when you stop trying to protect your confidence, it becomes unbreakable. Not because life gets easier, but because life loses leverage. Let the silence sit. If this way of thinking resonates, stay here. That's all. I didn't notice it at first, but once I stopped reacting, another problem showed up, a quieter one. I realized how addicted I was to feedback. Not praise, feedback. I needed some kind of signal from the outside to tell me how I was doing. A look, a response, a reaction. If I spoke and the room stayed flat, I felt it. If I sent a message and it took hours to come back, I felt it. If effort didn't get acknowledged, something inside me started pacing. That's not confidence. That's dependency. And most men are wired like that without ever admitting it. They think confidence comes from inner strength, but their nervous system is still waiting for permission. Permission to relax. Permission to feel solid. Permission to stop proving something. Once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. Every unnecessary explanation I gave was a form of asking. Every extra word was me reaching out, checking if I was still good. It's exhausting when you look at it, honestly. So I tried something uncomfortable. I stopped closing loops for people. If I said something and it landed weird, I let it land weird. If there was tension, I didn't smooth it over. If someone misunderstood me, I didn't rush to fix it. Not out of spite, out of discipline. At first, it felt like standing in the rain without moving. Your body screams for cover. That's when you realize how much of your behavior is just reflex. You talk to relieve pressure. You explain to calm yourself. You chase clarity so you don't have to sit with uncertainty. But uncertainty is where weak confidence collapses. Strong confidence learns to sit there. I remember one night, scrolling through old conversations, messages I'd sent months ago. Too long, too detailed, too eager. I could see myself trying to secure my position in real time, trying to lock things down so nothing slipped. That's fear pretending to be communication. So I cut things down, not dramatically, just cleaner, shorter replies, fewer justifications, no emotional punctuation. And something shifted again. People started filling the space themselves. They talked more, explained more, sometimes even backtracked without me saying a word. Silence does that. It flips the weight of the interaction. The man who speaks less isn't passive, he's stable, and stability changes the dynamic without effort. There was a moment with a friend who used to dominate every conversation. He'd interrupt, steer things back to himself, talk over everyone. I used to compete for airtime. This time I didn't. I spoke once, then I stopped. He kept going, longer than usual, rambling, repeating himself. It was like watching someone pull on a rope that wasn't tied anymore. That's when I understood something critical. Confidence doesn't push. It doesn't rush. It doesn't chase control. It waits because it doesn't need to move to be safe. Most men confuse silence with weakness because their silence is empty. They're quiet, but inside they're begging to be noticed. That kind of silence leaks. Real silence is different. It's full. It's settled. It doesn't need a response to justify itself. Once I built that, even slightly, Failure changed again. When things didn't work, there was still tension, still disappointment, but no identity damage, no spiral, no internal negotiations, just information. I failed. Okay. What's next? That's it. No story about what it means about me, and that's the part nobody teaches. Confidence dies when you narrate failure as a judgment. It survives when failure stays logistical, like a tool breaking in your hand. Annoying, but not personal. This is where most men get stuck. They want confidence before they let go of interpretation. They want to feel strong without giving up the habit of self-judgment. It doesn't work that way. You don't become confident and then stop overthinking. You stop overthinking, and confidence remains. Silence is the training ground. Not silence to look mysterious. Silence to break the addiction to reaction. The more I practiced it, the less I needed outcomes to behave. Win or lose, I stayed intact. And when you stay intact long enough, people sense it. Not consciously. They just feel that you're not available for chaos. That's when respect starts showing up quietly, not as admiration, as restraint. People interrupt you less, push you less, test you less, because there's nothing loose to grab. And that's where confidence stops being something you perform and becomes something you carry. There's a moment most men don't catch. It's subtle. Someone crosses a line, just a little, nothing dramatic. A joke that lands wrong, a request that assumes too much, a tone that shifts, and before you even think about it, you start explaining yourself. Not saying no, explaining why. That's where manipulation enters. Not because the other person is evil, but because you opened the door. I didn't realize how often I was doing this until I stopped talking. When I reduced my words, the pattern became obvious. Every time I felt the urge to explain, it wasn't about clarity. It was about fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being seen as difficult. Fear of losing approval. Explanation was my way of softening the ground so I wouldn't feel the impact. But here's the thing, nobody tells you. The moment you explain a boundary, you turn it into a debate. And debates invite pressure. I learned this the hard way. There was someone in my life who constantly pushed, not aggressively, casually, late requests, last-minute changes, little assumptions stacked on top of each other. I kept being reasonable. I'd say yes, but with context, or no, but with a paragraph. I thought I was being mature. What I was actually doing was negotiating my limits in public, and once people know your limits are negotiable, they keep negotiating. So I tried something different. The next time it happened, I didn't justify, I didn't soften it. I just said, that doesn't work for me. Then I stopped. No follow-up, no explanation, no tone management. The silence afterward felt heavier than the sentence itself. They waited. I didn't fill it. And something snapped into place. They adjusted. No argument. No drama. Just a quiet recalibration. That's when I understood a brutal truth. Weak boundaries talk too much. Strong boundaries don't explain because they don't need permission. Most men think explaining makes them fair. In reality, it makes them readable. Manipulation feeds on predictability. If people know you'll justify, they push. If they know you'll soften, they lean. But when your no arrives, clean and unsupported, there's nothing to grab. It just sits there. Solid. I started applying this everywhere. Work, friends, family. Not aggressively, not coldly. Just briefly. Requests got shorter responses. Pushback got less emotion. Guilt got no commentary. And here's the part that surprised me. People who respected me didn't react at all. They took the boundary and moved on. Only the ones benefiting from my flexibility felt uncomfortable. That discomfort wasn't my responsibility. Another shift happened inside me too. I stopped feeling the need to defend my choices internally, because every explanation you give out loud starts as a trial in your head. You prosecute yourself before anyone else does. Once I removed that habit, my mind got quieter. Decisions became cleaner, not easier, cleaner. I didn't need to convince myself anymore. I chose, I acted, I stood there. That's it. There was a moment someone tried to guilt me for not doing something I used to do. Old me would have explained the change, new priorities, timing, life. This time I didn't. I said, I don't do that anymore, and let the air sit. They laughed awkwardly, changed the subject. That was it. No fallout. No damage, just an updated boundary. This is what men miss. Boundaries don't require consensus. They require consistency. The more consistent you are, the less people test you. Not because they fear you, because there's no reward in pushing. Silence plays a role here too. When someone pushes and you don't react emotionally, their leverage disappears. They're pulling on something rigid. It doesn't to bend. It doesn't explain. It doesn't fight back. It just stays. That's anti-manipulation. Not calling it out, not confronting, not educating, just removing access. Over time, I noticed something else. I was being asked less, but respected more. That's the trade-off most men are afraid to make. They think fewer requests mean less value. In reality, it means clearer value. You're not useful because you're available. You're respected because you're selective. And once you internalize that, confidence locks in again, because nobody is steering you anymore. You're not reacting, you're choosing, quietly, deliberately, and nothing about that needs explanation. Something changes when you realize fewer people have access to you, not because you pushed them away, but because you stopped leaking. At first, it feels like loss. Fewer messages, less noise, less involvement. Your old identity starts to starve. The version of you that lived on response, reaction, usefulness, it doesn't get fed anymore. That's uncomfortable. Most men panic there and go back. They reopen access. They re-explain. They re-engage. I didn't. I stayed, and in that space, something else started forming. A quieter identity, one that wasn't shaped by how often I was needed, or how quickly I replied, or how useful I was in other people's plans. I noticed my days felt longer, not busier, longer, more empty space between actions. That space is where most men feel exposed, because without noise, you're left with yourself. No audience, no mirror, just decisions. That's where identity actually lives. I stopped asking, how do I look here? And started asking, is this aligned with how I move now? Subtle shift, massive effect. I didn't announce changes. I didn't explain new standards. I just acted differently, arrived calmer, spoke later, left earlier. And here's the part nobody expects. People adapt faster than you think. The room adjusts. Not consciously, they just sense there's less access. And when access drops, value concentrates. I wasn't louder, I wasn't colder, I was contained. That containment does something to the environment. People stop performing around you. They stop testing. They stop pushing for reactions, because there's nothing to hook into. It's like trying to start an argument with a wall, not dramatic, just pointless. There was a moment I caught it clearly. A discussion started heating up, voices rising, egos rubbing. Old me would have stepped in early, tried to manage it, be useful. This time, I waited, listened, watched. When I spoke, it was one sentence, not smarter than everyone else, just grounded. The room went quiet, not because I dominated, because I didn't need anything from the outcome. That's authority, not force, not status, absence of need. Authority grows when your identity no longer depends on participation. You're not invisible anymore. You're just not available for nonsense. That's the difference most men miss. They think being ignored is invisibility. It's not. Being reactive is invisibility. Because reactive men blend into the noise. Once I stopped reacting, I stood out without trying. Not as a leader, not as a rebel, as a fixed point, and fixed points reorganize systems, slowly, silently. This is why the reconstruction has to be internal first. If you try to act confident without withdrawing access, people feel the mismatch. They push harder, they test more, but when your identity is already settled, there's nothing to test. You're not playing a role, you're occupying a position. That position doesn't argue, doesn't advertise, doesn't chase relevance, it just holds. And over time, others respond to that. They check themselves before speaking. They choose words more carefully. They respect pauses, not because you demanded it, because the environment recalibrated around you. That's the final shift. You stop trying to be seen, and you become felt, not admired, not followed. Felt, like a weight in the room that doesn't move. That's where confidence ends its journey, not as a feeling, as a posture. And once posture is set, everything else follows without effort. Silence, boundaries, presence. They stop being tools, they become traits, and traits don't require maintenance. They just are. There's a phase nobody warns you about. After you stabilize, after you stop explaining, after people adjust, things get quiet. Too quiet. No drama, no chaos, no urgent pulls. And that's when the old reflex tries to come back. You start wondering if you should do more, say more, show more. Not because something is wrong, because you're not being stimulated anymore. Most men relapse here. They confuse calm with stagnation, so they re-enter noise on purpose. They start talking again, offering again, reacting again, just to feel movement. I caught myself doing it, replying faster than necessary, giving opinions that weren't asked for, filling space that didn't need filling. Nothing dramatic, just small leaks. That's how regression works, not through collapse, through comfort. So I set a rule for myself. If nothing is required, I do nothing. No optimization, no presence management, no staying relevant, just stillness. This is harder than it sounds, because stillness removes distraction, and distraction is how most men avoid responsibility. Not responsibility to others, responsibility to their own standards. When everything is quiet, you can't hide behind urgency. You see clearly what you tolerate, what you postpone, what you avoid. That's when discipline replaces confidence. Confidence gets you started. Discipline keeps you intact. I stopped measuring days by outcomes. Instead, I measured restraint. Did I speak when it wasn't needed? Did I react just to release tension? Did I compromise a boundary to stay comfortable? Those answers told me everything.